Welcome to the Irish Pagan School podcast. Your hosts are authors and co-founders of the Irish Pagan School here in County Waterford, Ireland, Laura O'Brien and Jon O'Sullivan. Fáilte.
Is it possible to survive an encounter with a puka? Well, Dag the Bogus Fáilte. Hi, hello, and welcome to Jon O'Sullivan from the Irish Pagan School. And at the moment, I'm exploring a lot of Ireland's mythology around monstrous creatures, mystical beings, and the dangers that would haunt the nights of Ireland. And one very famous one is a creature known as a puka. So that is spelt P-U-C-A or P-O-O-K-A if you want to Google or look it up. And there are many, many stories about the puka, but is it one creature or is it multiple types of creatures or is it one caste of creature? Hard to say for sure. But the answer, not hard to say, is the fact that yes, you can survive an encounter with a puka, but it does seem to depend on the type of puka. So we have a couple of different stories, and a great resource for this is the National Folklore Collection, the Schools Collection. You'll find on duchas.ie, that is duchas.ie. And if you put in the search terms, as I've given you already, you'll find a number of different stories. Many of them are still Oscuelga in Irish, which I am sad to say I'm not skilled enough to read or translate, but I'm working on that for myself because I do want to be egg conch talking Oscuelga in Irish. What they seem to have in common in many cases is that it is a quadruped creature. It is a dark creature. And in many cases, it's described as a very big, very dark, or very small horse. So it's either a large full-grown horse, or it is a small foal, or a donkey. In some circumstances, it's like a very, very large goat, a goat-sized donkey, a donkey-sized goat. um, but in all of them, it is a danger. It is a threat. And so in a lot of the stories, they talk about people making sure that when the seasons turn towards the darker times, when we begin to move towards the ending of the pagan year at Samhain, it is not a time to be out after dark, because that is when the puka rides and runs. So there are a number of different stories of people being out and about when they shouldn't have been out and about, and they are chased down lanes or down roads. There's one which a guy is walking home late from Donegal, and he's following the quick path to get himself home, and he ends up being chased for a mile by a small foal, he says. But as he turns to try and stop it following him home, being concerned that in some way this is someone else's horse or young foal, the creature opens its mouth wider than it really should to show an array of sharpened teeth, at which point he knows it's not a young foal, it is a puka. And fleeing and wailing for his life, he runs and sprints to the nearest house he can find, hammers on the door until they let him in, at which point he is then safe and secure from the puka. Now, other stories, and the most common story we find in the folklore, is people who are crossing a field they shouldn't be crossing. And it's almost like there's this liminality, like you're supposed to follow the road, you're not supposed to go off the road, but people cutting across the field in some way may come across a puka, and the puka would come upon them really quickly, knocks them to the ground, but then pick them up and throw them on its back. At this point, the puka would then run about the field, up and down the humps and hills of the field. In some cases, it's a very specific field. There's one where it says it actually gives the location of the field. I'm probably not going to do that, going to pull out that particular story. But there are places where it says that the puka has this territory, and it is puka territory. And so anyone crossing that field late at night might be subject to a ride on the puka, and they have to hold on for dear life, for to fall from the puka as it dashes about the corners of the field would be fit to break a man's neck. But if you can hold on, if you can endure, if you can take the jostling, the bumping, and the bouncing, you may find that you awaken after a night of terror at your own doorstep. There are other stories where people are traveling home with a friend, so it's not even that it's lonely individuals. There's one story of a guy called Paddy Ward who's walking home himself. He gets jostled by a puka. The puka throws him up on his back and begins to run. But instead of running around a particular field, it runs across all of the hills of Ireland. Um, Said to be the greenish Sidhe, the fairy wind, saying to run as fast as or upon the fairy wind. And this particular puka takes him across all of the major hills and it lists out the number of hills that he goes across. At the same time, the person who was with him when he was taken for the ride on the puka begins to desperately run to Paddy's house to let people know that Paddy has been taken for a ride. Interestingly, with this, by the time that person gets to Paddy's house, Paddy is already there. He's in a slump on his own doorstep, crying and distraught, such that he takes to his own bed for 3 weeks and was never seen outside of his house after 10 p.m., then ever after. So it is possible to survive an interaction or a meeting with the puka. What's more interesting is that it is an intelligent creature. It is not just some monstrous slavering beast who is fit to tear or kill someone or take someone on a trickster ride. There are other stories of people speaking with a puka or being brought by a puka to a particular occasion or an event of the other people. Now, the one that I referred to, there's a story, I found a couple of different versions of it. It's known as the Piper and the Puka, where a Puka gathers up an average piper. He's good at playing one song. He's not good at playing anything other than one song. But he's late walking home from a pub. He's earned like a bit of money to buy his mam her snuff. And as he's heading home, he comes across a puka. The puka grabs him up, throws him on his back, and begins to gallop away with him. At the same point, though, the puka begins to converse to the piper and tells him that he's taking him to a gathering of the Banshee, and there he is to perform. At which point the poor piper says, I only know one song. And the puka says, no, you're to play Shan Van Vocht, the poor old woman. You're to play that song. And the piper says, I don't know that song. But the puka says, you'll play the song and I'll make sure that you know how to play it. I'll make sure that you have the music to play it. So interestingly, in this, the puka is acting as an otherworld agent in a way. It brings the piper into this house of old women with who are all sitting around a golden table, and then the piper begins to play, and he just is trying his best to play a song, but the song that comes out is the one that the puka told him to play, the Shan Van Bucht, the poor old woman. At which point, these old women, there's a collection of them, begin to dance around on the table, at the end of which each of them give him a gold piece, and then he is taken on home by the puka and returned. There are other elements to the story as well, but really those are the classic kind of points that we find. The puka returns him home. He then goes into his mom, and his mother is like, well, obviously you were off carousing, you're drunk, and where have you been? And he's like, no, I was taken by the puka and I was taught to play music, and here are these gold coins. Unfortunately, the next morning, the gold coins have turned into leaves. But quite fortunately, the piper can now play more than one song. He has been given Kjol Nashi, the music of the other people, the music of the Shi. So it's possible to survive an interaction with a puka. There's no guarantee that you're going to survive an interaction with a puka. But if you are smart enough, if you are talented enough, if you are capable enough, you may get away with it. Oh, one other piece of information. It's said in Ireland that, and in all of the hedgerows, there are many different hedgerows that grow blackberries. And most commonly, those blackberries are forageable and available for everybody, except after Halloween, once we get to Samhain, because it is believed at that point that all of them belong to the puka, and the puka spits on the blackberries to claim them. And so if you are ever in Ireland, if you are on the harvest season and you're coming across blackberries, double check the date and make sure that they haven't had puka spit all over them. Until next time, look after yourself. Take care. If you'd like to know more about Ireland's pagan school, or the Irish Pagan School, Irish Pagan Mythology and Folklore, all you got to do is go to irishpagan.school/free. We have a year's worth of free resources available for you there. And until next time, do take care. And remember, not all donkeys are donkeys. Not all foals are foals, especially if it's after dark in Ireland. Slán.
If you enjoyed this podcast, please leave us a positive review in your podcast listener. Then head over to irishpaganschool.com and enroll in one of our free or paid courses. Slán go fóill, and we will see you next time.